Welcome in, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, Monday, November 17th, 7 a.m., as we are going to recap a fascinating college football weekend. You can always be a part of the show, 800 239 9569 to get in. Text in 205 834 9450. Tweet in at Mac and Cube. G-Mac, you were on the call for Alabama, Oklahoma over the weekend. 23-21 Oklahoma gets the win. Both teams go to 8-2. I want to start with this. Based on what you thought the plan was going to be or needed to be for Alabama, what was lacking? What was there that maybe they thought was going to be there, you thought was going to be there, that Oklahoma either took away or Alabama just could not find?
Well, Alabama, I thought, had a lot of things. They had 400 yards offense. That's only the second team this year that went for over 400 against Oklahoma. I thought, moved the ball very, very well. And honestly, I thought the passing game was very strong, especially in the first half. The big thing is I felt like in the second half, Ty and the protection was not as sound as it needed to be. I think it goes for everybody. The ability for the receivers to uncover was not as good as you'd like. But if you look at how quickly Ty was getting rid of the ball, if you look at how quickly he was getting the ball out there in the first half, how decisive he was, how good he was with his eyes, scanning the field, finding the outlet, it kind of fell off a bit in the second half with how quickly he was progressing, how quickly he was getting through everything, and as a result held the ball just a touch longer, and it led to them being less efficient offensively throwing the football. So, honestly, I felt like they kind of had everything they want, but Cole, is just a couple of big mistakes, and in a game with narrow margins, you lose a game by 2 when you're -3 in the turnover margin and basically -4 in the turnover margin if you take into account the big punt return on the first punt of the game. So I think there's a lot to take from it, but to me, it's hard to win games when you make mistakes, you know?
No, Alabama was actually better on third down. You mentioned outgained Oklahoma, outrushed Oklahoma, had fewer penalties than Oklahoma. Difference was those 3 turnovers. And it's interesting when you talk about like the success of the offense, what was there for Alabama. Those turnovers specifically early, that played right into Oklahoma's hands and what they were going to give. They were going to give things outside. They were going to give things underneath. And as you stated, first half, Ty Simpson good at finding some of those things. Maybe got a little greedy, maybe pressed a little bit to try to find some things down the field in the second half. But that's what allows Oklahoma to play aggressive up front, and that's where they caused a lot of commotion. That's where they caused a lot of things to go wrong. The run game, not super consistent. Felt like it kind of began to go just a little bit, specifically
Yeah.
with Daniel Hill in the second half of the game. Offensive line didn't sort things out very well. I mean, there's no real nice way to say that. You had linebacker run through that wasn't picked up, both in pressures and in the run game. Some of the stunts, the twists that Oklahoma's going to give you, it's who they are, not passed off the way they needed to be. And with a little more zone stuff, you kind of thought that would sort it out. But either a guard, a center, tackle, just the awareness to come off on a different player, the awareness to not follow a guy inside or up, just not always there. But competitive in this game, at the end of the day, you made big mistakes and you made costly mistakes. Special teams were absolutely huge for Oklahoma in this game. And not just from the scoring standpoint, which I think a lot of people are going to point to, Greg, but field position was also huge for Oklahoma and allowing that defense to play as aggressive as they did. I thought Oklahoma tackled extremely well. There were a lot of one-on-one plays on the outside or underneath in which they did not allow for a lot of yards after the catch. And it was a plan that Oklahoma had that I think Alabama kind of played right into. Because if you don't get those turnovers, I don't know if Oklahoma's able to be aggressive defensively as they are. And they might have to do a little more heavy lifting on offense, in which in this game they didn't really have to.
Yeah, and I think the defense for Bama played great. Here's the silver lining. And I know nobody really wants to hear this. The things that sell now are super negative. Remind me last year how the game went between Alabama and Oklahoma.
Poorly.
Not good, right? Really bad. Right? Not what you want. One of the worst offensive performances I can ever remember following the Crimson Tide. My whole life, my whole adult life has been spent supporting the Tide, and that was the worst one I've ever seen. Here's the silver lining. Similar circumstances to the mistakes that were made in last year's game. No, very similar. Bad turnover, pick six, inability to manufacture a whole lot because of the mistakes that you made throughout the game. I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, yeah,
Player
Bama
yelling
had
at teammate on field after poor play.
Yeah.
Same as
Your
last
boy.
year versus Oklahoma.
Correct, except it was the kicker, so very few people are paying attention to the interaction between the kicker and snapper, but I digress. They were actually -2 in the turnover margin last year. They were -3 this year. Tell me how competitive Alabama was in that game last year.
I didn't feel like they were very competitive in that one.
No, they weren't, right? So guess what? Here's the silver lining. Bama played their sloppiest game, arguably, from a turnover margin perspective, of the Kalen DeBoer era and lost the game by 2, and yet had many opportunities to actually go and win it. And if not for a blocked field goal or a shanked field goal, might have won it. And I'm not saying, look, if Sam Butts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. But I think there was progress made. Team's sloppy. The ball's not bouncing their way. By the way, they had the 3 turnovers. They had the long punt return given up. They had a field goal blocked / whiffed. And they also had another fumble that was on the deck that they were fortunate to recover. And Jeremy Bernard had the ball squeak out twice.
Yeah.
So, they were sloppy with the football, and only 3 of those plays resulted in actual takeaways. But there's a lot to clean up from a ball security standpoint from that game. But they were much more competitive and tougher and resilient in this performance than they were last year. And the sign of disaster, they folded their tent in 24. That wasn't the case this year, so I think there was some growth on display there.
Yeah, I think they're. I mean, listen, we don't. I think like Stephen Pearl said last night, moral victories are for losers. But either way, there are things that you can take from this game and say easily correctable moving forward. But I think a lot of people are going to look at it, Greg, and say a lot of the same, like the ability to run the football. This is one of the more difficult fronts in college football to run on. So I would never watch this game on its own for any team. And if they lack the ability to have a consistent rushing attack, say, well, you can't run the ball. That's a problem. You're just going to have to find other ways around it against this team. And I have said all year, I said it when Auburn played them, and Auburn had a little more success with it than I think a lot of people thought that they would. Alabama, I think I counted 2 runs that they had success with it. I think you have to go right at it. I think you have to go downhill quickly at this defense if you're going to have success running the football. The zone stuff that takes a long time to develop or that is very patient, I understand the mindset there. It's like, hey, let's let this penetrator come inside. We'll have time to retrack on the loop man if we need to, and we'll be there. It sounds awesome. The problem is it's never going to be the same. You're never going to get a stunt exactly the same way against this group. They're going to add a linebacker run through. They're going to add an extra man to the twist and run a 3-man game instead of a 2-man game. And so when you think you've got it, it's different the next time. But when you get downhill on it, and you're not going to win every one of these, when you get downhill on it and you hit it fast, it's impossible for them to be where they need to be quickly because some of these things that they do take a long time to develop. I feel like Alabama could have had a little more success with that. I think they had 2 runs that actually went for decent yardage where it was just an inside zone or a duo and they just went right at them. It's north and south and it hit. But the pin and pull stuff getting outside and your puller's trying to find different players and the alley defender's going to show up and the linebacker's going to show up and the DN's crashing. It's tough sledding when you're going to do that, man. So I don't look at the inability to run the football in this game as a major season-long issue for Alabama, even though it has been to an extent. This is not the game to really judge that. You are going to have to do what you did in the first half, in my opinion. You take the underneath throws. You take the checkdowns. When you get a one-on-one, you take a couple of them. The quarterback's going to have to tuck the ball and run a few times. And you're just going to have to chip away. And they were doing that. They had that going. But then with the turnovers and the other scores, it gets you out of that game plan to an extent. So I thought if we were talking about roadmaps to victory, this may have been the one that Oklahoma would have presented as plan A, as far as just the way this game played out, the way this game went.
Yeah, it was exactly like the Tennessee game. I mean, a couple big turnovers, massive hidden yardage advantage when it comes to interception return and punt return. Like, if you really look at it, and turnovers inside their own territory. So they had, what, 2 turnovers that were inside their own territory? I didn't even reference the interception that Ty threw into the end zone that was wiped out by a holding penalty that really was kind of unnecessary. That ball was getting picked either way. As far as the run game is concerned, here's my thing with the run game. Like, Oklahoma gives up about 80 yards a game. And that's to teams that are a lot more committed to running the football than Alabama. So I actually felt like Alabama ran it pretty good. I know it sounds crazy, and you'd like to look at the numbers and look at a little better than 2.4 an attempt, but there was a decent amount of sack yardage that was lost there. There's a decent amount of plays that factored into that overall box score. I mean, Ty got sacked for... Yeah, he ended up with -9 yards rushing, and that was with a long of 9 yards. So, I mean, he lost probably 20 yards worth of sacks. I'm not sure exactly. So that number probably a little better than you even realize when you take it into account. So I think all things considered, it hurts. You're upset, but you can clean things up. And it was a remarkably uncharacteristic performance. If this team had been sloppy, turnover prone all season long, I'd be like, oh boy, here we go again. But that had not been the case. They had 6 turnovers going into this performance this past weekend. They had 3 in this game, and it could have been 5 very easily. So the good news is, clap it off. You still control your own destiny, not just to get to Atlanta for the SEC title. You control your own destiny to get to the college football playoff. And you just got to go and do it now. I mean, that's as simple as that. And for everybody that's like bemoaning and saying, oh, well, we got to go to Auburn, that's going to be tough. Yeah, well, guess what? In the BCS era, we had to go to Auburn too. In the 14 playoff era, you had to go to Auburn too. And guess what? Winning that game, it was a must-win game in many different occasions. And if you want to go chase championships, you got to go and get it. And will it be hard? Better dang believe it. But that's the beauty of it. That's what makes it fun. So I think it's going to be just fine. I'm not worried about the team at all. I just think that a bit of an off day. If there's a few things that I would like to clean up, I feel like Ty the last couple of weeks has just been the tiniest bit off on a couple throws. It hasn't been bad. It's just there's been a few more misses than there were in the first 8 games of the year. Just a couple more. It's not to the point where it's like, goodness gracious, this guy's missing by a mile. But there's just a couple more misses the last couple games than there was. I think you got to clean up the communication up front along the offensive line. The amount of A-gap pressure they gave up was ridiculous. The pick 6, by the way, that'll obviously go on Ty's sheet. I tallied it in the game. You can't fan that protection and go block the 2 wide guys. Meanwhile, the A-gap is completely unaccounted for, and the middle linebackers running right through it. Like, you got to block that thing inside out. Let me deal with the end man on the line of scrimmage, not the guy that's right in my face. So that's going to go on Ty's stat sheet, but frankly, that's on the right side of the offensive line. They moved Formby down to right guard. They moved Carroll into right tackle. I thought Carroll had a tough day, especially working against 44 for Oklahoma, who's an excellent football player. But for the most part, man, like, you just got to get those things sorted. It's first time starting, first time with that arrangement, and it showed. So very correctable mistakes, not something to press the panic button on. But this was a good team, and this is going to be a hard game. And they made it hard, and they forced mistakes, and they made plays, and they deserved to win the game.
Well, I'm just going to tell you that first half plan we talked about, along with those pressures you're referencing, you better be able to play that style game against some of these defenses in college football right now, because they've got you figured out, and they don't care. They are giving more and more, saying, we don't think you're going to be able to handle this up front, and we don't think you're going to have an answer for this. And it happened to Ole Miss this weekend. I saw it multiple times with them where they weren't going to get it sorted out, and they didn't have the numbers, and you try to sit back there in the pocket and make a throw. It's not going to happen. It isn't. You got to come up with quick answers against these defenses. They're going to come out there and they're going to attack you. You look at South Carolina and A&M against both those defenses. trying to sit in the pocket on things that you don't have the numbers for at the end of the day. And you better have quick answers to be able to get the ball out. I saw a lot of teams this weekend have trouble with that, and it's going to continue to give people trouble. Don't get caught in the cold. Schedule your system checkup now from a Train Comfort Specialist. Train has been recognized 11 consecutive years as Alabama's most trusted HVAC brand. And our exclusive home comfort partners here at Jocks, visit train.com to find a comfort specialist near you. All right, we'll get Paul Finebaum's thoughts on this game. Coming up today, we've got Scott Myers to announce this year's Alabama Sports Hall of Fame class at 8:40. Tyler Watts at 9. Former Bama quarterback was in the stadium. He gives us his thoughts. And we'll start our Monday visits with Richard Hendricks to talk college basketball at 9:30. I'm sure Josh Pate will hate that, but it's there. It's here. We've got some big games within the SEC and for in-state teams, so we're going to start talking about them. All that and more next right here on Jocks. Welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. It is 7:19 Monday, November 17th, right here on Jocks. He joins us each and every week thanks to our friends at Craneworks from ESPN, the SEC Network. Can hear him 2 to 6 p.m. right here on WJOX. It's Paul Finebaum.
Lift it, load it, grade it, grind it, move it, haul it, rig it, dig it, Craneworks, Rentalworks, yeah! The big dog's got it.
Paul Finebaum on Mac and Cube in the morning is brought to you by Craneworks. Lift it, buy it, rent it, the big dog's got it. Now, Paul Finebaum.
Paul, we were referencing this Alabama loss to Oklahoma, one in which Alabama outgains Oklahoma, better on third down, fewer penalties, outrushed Oklahoma, but obviously the turnovers, 3 differential in this game. Is this an excusable loss for you, for Alabama?
It is inexcusable when you consider everything that is at stake and how much easier Alabama's position would be. But at this point in the season, you really don't get caught up as much on hyperbole, but reality. And the reality is Alabama is still in reasonably good shape. So I think that's what happens in the age of the playoff. In any other year in the past, this would have been cataclysmic, but it doesn't feel that bad. And I don't sense the reaction yet, being the operative word, has been that bad because the Auburn game is still ahead, and it's not simple. But beating an Auburn team that's already fired its coach, shouldn't be the biggest task for a program on the way to hopefully winning an SEC or national championship.
Paul, I mean, obviously the reaction's always strong after a loss, but I feel like this team is really well liked by just even talking to my friends who are fans. They really like this team. They really like the guts they displayed during the 8-game win streak. They really like how they've continued to fight with their back against the wall. The mindset in general, I guess the warpath that they've been on and trying to prove the doubters wrong after the week 1 defeat. So, how do you think this team is? Do you think it's because this team has just built up so much goodwill amongst the fan base that the reaction isn't too significant?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think that is a great point. And you just compare this Monday to a Monday 12 weeks ago. It's not even on the same map. I mean, that was literally the end of the world. What are we going to do? Are we stuck with the board? Today, it's okay. Let's regroup. We got an easy game Saturday. And we go to Auburn. And I was, the most surprising thing to me yesterday was the lack of outrage. And I think it was also refreshing, Greg. Back to what you said, we've seen so much from what this group has accomplished. And I think you also have to factor in, you were not playing a losing team on Saturday. You weren't playing a team a year ago in Norman that was somewhat already put away for the year. I mean, this Oklahoma team followed up a win at Tennessee with a win at Tuscaloosa. Very few teams have ever done that before. And I think that also added to the ingredients in trying to figure out what exactly this means. I think in the end, it doesn't mean that much. We're in the age of 2025. Disappointment, yes. End of the world, no. It's pretty simple. What is ahead?
Paul Finebaum with us in the Higginbotham Hotline, joins us every Monday thanks to Craneworks. How do you view the SEC right now, heading into the SEC championship game, as far as real contenders that can go win a national championship to win the league? Where do you sort of draw the line on teams that you truly believe in?
I truly believe in Georgia. I think everyone else does as well. Same for Ole Miss, and we'll get to them in a minute with some of the chaos that could be building. A&M did not disappoint me in the sense that people are saying, well, are they still a championship contender? Well, they took a half off, 11 o'clock kick against a team that has managed to lose to just about everyone, and then they pulled off the greatest comeback in modern SEC history. So I'm not mad at them. I think they're really good. And I think that's where you have it right now. I mean, Oklahoma's a little harder to quantify. I mean, I alluded to them a minute ago in terms of how well that defense has played and how it keeps them literally in every game. That they should be able to take care of the rest. And then, can Vanderbilt find a slot with this crowded field ahead of them? But it's pretty obvious who the best and the brightest are at the top of this league.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking like 5. If Bama can win, Oklahoma can win out. It feels like Georgia and Ole Miss and A&M are all locks at this point, regardless of what happens down the stretch. So it's kind of wild to see that we're in this spot, but also pretty amazing, too, given the depth of the league. It's looking like Alabama, based on some of the projections from Heather Dinich wrote an article, it's looking like they could drop, according to the College Football Playoff Committee, all the way to 9. I mean, for a 2-point loss, -3 in the turnover margin to drop 5 spots, to me feels aggressive, but that might be how it all shakes out. Where do you think it would be appropriate for these teams to be ranked based on what they've done up to this point of the season?
I mean, it does seem pretty dramatic, but I think the real issue is there's a lot in front of them. You can't put them ahead of Oklahoma, and obviously most of the other schools take care of themselves. I just think it's just the debate is exactly where is it 8, is it 9, and I don't know how much it really matters yet. I mean, I know it matters if you're sitting up there commenting on it for an hour, Greg.
Well, it matters because
But
of the home field in the first round. I mean, I mean, if chalk flies in front of you, that's a tough spot because now you might have to go on the road in the first round as opposed to having a home game. That's the only reason why it matters. And granted, it's a long way from now, but yeah, it's a tough fall.
But yeah, but back to where can they pick up ground? I think is the ultimate question, and I think to that point, there's not a lot of places in front of them. Ole Miss isn't going to lose. Georgia could lose. Texas A&M might lose. So I mean, I think that's where that's really what matters here for Alabama is who in front of them can lose and where can they pick up a valuable spot. But I think ultimately you're right. I don't think it's. I think Saturday's the most costly aspect of that was making things very difficult at the beginning of the playoff as opposed to fairly easy.
Paul, you brought up the potential chaos that is set to ensue. A lot of our listeners might not be aware of some of the rumors that are floating around about what is potentially happening with one particular coaching search, and that would be Lane Kiffin's flirtation with Florida and whether or not he's going to take this job, and potentially that administration giving him an ultimatum heading into the end of the season. Where is Ole Miss right now? Where is Lane Kiffin right now, based on what you're hearing?
Well, I mean, if what you're hearing is true, then again, I say that somewhat tongue in cheek. That Lane Kiffin could be out of there very quickly, but I have a hard time believing that. I mean, we all know Lane Kiffin equally well, and for all of whatever he has done in the past, the idea of walking out on a football team is almost impossible for me to believe. For the gain of a job that he could probably get whenever he wants, the damage to him, his reputation and career, I think, and to the sport, quite frankly, would be beyond my words. I just can't believe it. So I think what Lane Kiffin and his administration have to figure out is how to navigate these waters. If he's going to Florida, and that's where the rumors are, then when is he going? And how do you do it? The one thing I do think is worth repeating is it's not so much where Lane Kiffin goes. It's just some of the people in the industry are beginning to question the value of a playoff berth versus where a coach will end up for the next however many years. And that's what surprised me the other day, just talking to agents and athletic directors, how the coaches were viewing it. To me, you work your entire career to get to a point like Lane Kiffin has gotten at Ole Miss. Why would you torch it right now to get a job that you could probably get whenever you want it?
I'm sure. I think it's varying degrees. Like I get very much like Florida's a job that he's always had great admiration for. I get it. And what he's done at Ole Miss, man, to win 10 games in a season in 3 straight years is pretty remarkable. But the realities are they've had a very fortunate draw the last couple of years. From a strength of schedule standpoint, it could get tougher, and the expectations at Ole Miss have now been reestablished. So maybe that factors in as well. What about LSU? Where do you think they ultimately end up going? Assuming you have Kiffin at Florida, Summerall's in hot pursuit and of a lot of schools, but it feels like Auburn would make a lot of sense for him. Who knows what's going to happen with Arkansas? But where do you think this is ultimately going to end up for LSU?
Well, I mean, I think the name of the moment's probably Eli Drinkwitz, and certainly he's a good name. He isn't Lane Kiffin on the buzz meter, but he's probably the next best thing. Do you go back to the well where you were 5 years ago and make another run at Lincoln Riley, who, in spite of a couple of incredibly mediocre years, has done a very good job this year of at least resurrecting his name and respect, and his program is in tremendous shape at the moment. barring whatever happens Saturday afternoon in Eugene. So I think that's what we think. And I mean, of all these jobs, I'm probably most confident in saying I think Summerall is going to Auburn, and Kiffin will be offered the Florida job. Beyond that, I think everything is a little bit dicey.
What would prevent him from taking that job, Paul?
Uh, I mean, I think the only thing that would prevent Lane from taking it would be just the situation where it would be too complicated, depending on the playoff situation. But I think he, again, what Kiffin said after the game is somewhat irrelevant. He knows he could have put an end to it. It's pretty obvious he doesn't want to put an end to it. So I mean, I think at this point, conventional wisdom would be, as long as he doesn't blow up the entire place in departing, he's going to probably take that job.
Paul, we always appreciate the time. Great stuff as always, and we look forward to catching up with you again next week.
Thank you.
Paul Finebaum joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline. Thanks to Craneworks. He's with us each and every Monday. So follow up a little bit on what Paul said there. Playoff picture, how that looks. Greg brought up home games, and it's something that I've actually heard from a lot of people talking about the playoffs and what doesn't matter and what does matter not be mentioned. I'm not really sure why. Playing at home in a playoff game is not being talked about a little more regularly, and the importance that would come with that. So we'll look at those outlooks now. We'll try to explain to you what the SEC championship game outlook is like as far as scenarios and how that goes, and more next right here on Jocks. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Appreciate you guys tuning in. 7:35 Monday, November 17th, right here on Jocks. So let's go further with Alabama now, Greg, and their situation, kind of where they are in all of college football. You want to be part of the show? Give us your thoughts. Paul Finebaum saying that he has a little bit of an understanding of how this game went, where this game went for Alabama, not ruling them out, not throwing in the towel on the Crimson Tide just yet. But we'll start with the SEC, the conference, and kind of what lies ahead here. The scenarios that are in place for Alabama and some of the other teams in the SEC and exactly where that needs to go, because it does become a little bit confusing now. For Alabama to get to the SEC championship game, they would need to win out, have a Texas A&M loss, or a win out Ole Miss loss, or win out and win the strength of schedule margin over Georgia. Georgia would need an Alabama loss or a Texas A&M loss, or Ole Miss win and win the strength of schedule over Alabama. Texas A&M just needs to win out, and they are in, or they need an Alabama loss with an Ole Miss loss if they were to drop another one. And then Ole Miss needs to win out, an A&M loss, and an Alabama loss to find their way in. So Oklahoma was actually eliminated from the SEC championship game over the weekend with that win against Alabama. So Georgia, Bama, A&M, Ole Miss all still have a shot. GMAC feels like Ole Miss going to probably be a long shot there.
Yes.
But either way, Alabama can still play their way into the SEC championship game. It's a great spot to be in. You could actually go in, win that game, skip a playoff game, and while you're in the playoffs, which would be magnificent. So a lot of good things potentially there in front of this team.
Yeah, it's one of those unique situations where a lot can be enhanced in victory against Texas A&M, assuming it's them. A lot can be enhanced in victory for the Tide. Like, a lot of people would say, oh, you know, the SEC championship games, the championship games are no longer important. Not the case. Bama wins. It goes from going on the road in the playoff potentially to all of a sudden not just hosting, but possibly getting a first-round bye. So absolutely enormous stakes there, assuming they get the win against Auburn, where they are a healthy 10.5-point favorite right now and look-ahead line. So I think there's a lot to take into account with where things are going. Everything's still very much in front of them. No reason to panic. Just have to get back to playing good, sound, smart football, which is something they did not do this past weekend for the first time all year.
So we ask you, where are you on this team right now? 800-239-9569 if you want to get in. 800-239-WJOX. You can text in 205-834-9450. Tweet in at Mac and Cube. There were a lot of positives. There were good takeaways. And I think the other thing outside of the turnovers, Greg, that you would look to and say that you have maybe concerns about, that you don't know for sure if they're going to be taken care of moving forward, would be special teams. Now, Oklahoma just also handled their business on special teams. You go for 3 for 3 on field goals. 3 of your punts land inside the 20. You forced Alabama's average starting position, at the 21-yard line, I think it was. And then obviously Isaiah Satanga gives you the 42-yard punt return. You miss your only field goal attempt, and that starting field position just not where it needs to be. So that's an area that that type performance can't happen again in some of these games that we're talking about down the stretch, be it the Iron Bowl, SEC championship game, or a college football playoff game.
Yeah, and what did I tell you when I went to watch Alabama? First scrimmage, second scrimmage, or whatnot? What was the first thing I said? I said, look, the one thing that's really concerning me about this team is the special teams unit, and it just isn't very reliable. I mean, your kicker, Connor Talty, is now 11-17 in kicking field goals this year. That's terrible. He's got a big leg. I don't like undressing your snapper, but the snapper missed the snap. The matches were still laced. You still got to hit it. Where's his head at right now? That's been one of my concerns from the get-go, is kicker and punter, because those things can win and lose games. I mean, look at Tate Sandell for Oklahoma, like you just referenced. I don't think they win at Tennessee or Alabama if not for his left leg. So I think it's pretty significant to take that into account and the importance of that position. And, it's a story we've seen a million times. It's kickers and punters at Alabama, for whatever reason, have not always been super elite. And that's the one position group over the last 2 decades that has at times cost them games. And not saying that he was the only reason to blame in this one. No, not by any stretch. There's a million reasons why Alabama lost the game. But it can, when margins are super tight, missing a kick is enormous.
Yeah, those kicks were big for Alabama. The one that was missed, and then obviously the ones that Oklahoma made, and then obviously the punts too, where you're able to sort of flip field position and put people in bad spots. We'll talk more about that, more about the game plan for Alabama and for Oklahoma on the other side. Tell our listeners about Polar Bear Services first.
Well, Weston and the guys have been coming to our house for a very long time, and I continue to be very appreciative of all the experiences that we've had when working with Polar Bear Services. They've helped me with electrical, they've helped me with plumbing, and they continue to be my go-to when it comes to my HVAC system. You can go and see just for yourself, the independent trained dealer that is Polar Bear Services, how many ways they can help you around the house by going and checking them out online. But I highly recommend you getting them out before the cold weather gets here, because you want to do some preventative maintenance, because the last thing you want is your home to be frigid when you walk in the house because your heater is not up to speed. So get that system tuned up, get it checked up by our friends at Polar Bear Services. So remember, if you have a problem with your electrical, plumbing, heater, air, just pick up the phone and call the Bear. It's 205-497-BEAR. It's 497-BEAR.
All right, when we come back, more on Alabama, Oklahoma. Your feedback, 800-239-9569. Text in 205-834-9450 on a Reaction Monday right here on Jocks. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. It is 7:45 Monday, November 17th, right here on Jocks. Sticking with Alabama and Oklahoma, we will get to Texas, Georgia, massive win for the Bulldogs. Ole Miss holding on against Florida. Obviously, the best comeback maybe in the history of the SEC with A&M over South Carolina. Um, Missouri hammers Mississippi State, and then a couple other teams handled their business over the weekend. We'll get to all of them. We'll get out of the league a little bit as well. 800-239-9569. You want to be a part of the show right here on Jocks. What is the most concerning thing for you? You put everybody's minds at ease to an extent early in the show, Greg, with certain things may not continue, easily repairable. What's one or two things that you look at from this game and say that they might not be able to get that right? That's something they're absolutely going to have to work around for the rest of this season and probably into the postseason.
Gosh, it's a great question. I mean, the thing is, their best player is Ty Simpson. Like, he's their most important player. It goes without saying. It's the quarterback. It should not come as a huge surprise that that's the conclusion that we jump to. We know that. I mean, Ty Simpson is their most important player. If he plays super high-level football, he should be in a great spot. The team should be in a great spot every single week. And I think he's done that all year long, man. In the absence of a run game, you got to give him immense credit for what he's been able to accomplish. I mean, seriously, they would not be in this spot without him. He's been awesome. But for whatever reason, if he continues to just have a couple misses or maybe just the tiniest bit skittish in the pocket, that could be a little dicey knowing against some of the teams that they're facing. Now, let's be real. How many teams on defense from this point forward will he see that are as good as the one that he just played? Honest question. Like, I'm asking you that question.
I'm not going to say in its entirety, but I'll just say this. I don't think you're going to play a more difficult front seven to manage no matter what happens to you the rest of the year.
I'm the same page.
So.
Like, I think that was the toughest test that he'll face. So, and that includes teams that he might face in the postseason. So it doesn't mean that, and guess what? That is not just they're a physical football team, but they're a complex football team. They're a difficult team to play against. They force your eyes into places that they don't want to be. They just make you uncomfortable. So he played them better than pretty much anybody all season long. And he didn't, he had a couple mistakes for sure, but guess what? That happens against a group like that. So I'm not overly concerned about it. But he now has seen 3 remarkably difficult defenses in a row to play against from a quarterback's vantage point. If you really look, South Carolina, LSU, and Oklahoma this past weekend. So that's 3 very difficult defenses to account for. And I think that he now will come out the other side, and this game this weekend will get him back on track. I don't think a game against Eastern Illinois could ever come at a better time. Just to get him back on track, get the game to slow down just a hair for him, because he's played phenomenally well. I mean, he is so much more than you could have ever anticipated from him. He is so much better than I could have ever wished. He has just been terrific this season, but I do feel like last weekend, especially in the second half, it was moving a little fast. And guess what? It happens. When you're playing against a game, I mean, it feels like they have 13 guys on defense. That's the best defense I've seen this year. And it has been all year. I said it. If you go back and watch the Auburn game, when I called that game in week 4, I said, this is the best defense I've seen. And it remains true. So I wouldn't panic. I think getting your quarterback back on track, the last time he had a little bit of a dicey performance was against Florida State. He came back the following week against Louisiana Monroe, completed every single one of his passes, and then just got as hot as can be from that point forward. So I think settling him down, getting him back on track, getting him feeling confident will be paramount moving forward. And I think he's got the right mindset to do it.
There's a lot that you look at and say, yeah, I can see him moving ahead and getting a couple of these things repaired. You're not going to get that kind of defense. I do wonder, though, how many defenses that they're going to see moving forward have similar things and now are going to do more of it. So I look at that movement up front defensively. Let's take Alabama's defense, for example, against LSU. Most movement we've seen all year up front. They were able to get that going a little bit later in the year. That's one thing that I would kind of look at and say, the defenses you're going to see, would feel very safe guaranteeing that 2 weeks in Auburn, you're going to see a lot of guys walked up. You're going to get a lot of movement up front because you didn't sort that out very well.
Yeah.
And I thought the plan with a lot of the zone stuff early on, that's the plan that I would have gone to, by the way. That's the plan that I feel like gives you the best opportunity to make it happen. And just too many linebackers not touched, combination blocks not able to get off on it, even get a shot at the linebacker, letting linebackers play under and run through. It's just awareness. It's just understanding, hey, this is probably not going to stay like this. And that's the hard part with a lot of these pressures now, because none of them are going to stay the way they look. And you set the pressure based on what is being shown. And that's most likely not what you're going to have to actually block. And
Right.
some of the pressures that they're allowing and utilizing don't give you the opportunity to actually pick up what's being presented or what's other than what's being presented, which you usually don't get. So it was a tough spot for them. But, I mean, you just got to know you got to go to quick game there. And I think the run play has to be decidedly north and south against a group that wants to do this kind of stuff. And that's where you'll be able to hit them. And then you slow them down. You get them into your game, as opposed to where Oklahoma, with the turnovers in the field position and some of the success with that early, they were able to keep this in their style game. And you can't let a group that's that athletic, that talented, play their style game. That's not the fight that you need to try to take to them.
With all due respect to Auburn, I think Oklahoma is a far more difficult defense to play against. It doesn't mean that they're not good. I just think Oklahoma's level of disruption at the second level is a whole nother level. I think Auburn's fine. I think they're a good group, but the linebackers at Oklahoma are significantly better than the linebackers. I think Atkins is great, but I think that's what kind of makes them different. I think Auburn is not quite as twitchy against Alabama. I think Alabama matches up slightly better against Auburn than they do against Oklahoma. The twitchiness of Oklahoma's front is tricky. I think the quality of the interior depth is tricky as well. So I think Bama matches up better with Auburn, but it's a copycat league. I think you're going to get a lot of the same of what you just saw. The other difference is that Auburn plays a lot of man. So you're going to see a lot of man coverage. You're going to see a lot of man coverage on third down. That should be advantage Alabama. They have really good weapons, and they have guys that can get and create separation. So, yes, will there be aspects of the plan, considering Auburn basically has 3 weeks to prepare for one single game? Sure. Of course, they'll have aspects of the plan that are different, and it'll be a one-game season for them, and they'll have some good stuff. But I think as far as just flat-out player-for-player personnel, last week was a far more difficult test than the one they're going to get this upcoming week when they play against Auburn.
No, I don't disagree with some of what you said about the ability, the talent, but I do feel like there are some different strengths that some of the Auburn kids can add. You know, I think that
No
Auburn
doubt.
defense could add a little bit more length. I think they have some more wiry, longer defenders that can also spend some time down inside. Nobody has a group of D tackles like Oklahoma does. You're not going to get it
No.
again. You're not playing against a team in college football that has a group of defensive tackles like Oklahoma has. It's just not going to be there. But
No.
you're going to get some of these things that they did that they had success with to see if you can just manage it and see if you can deal with it. I didn't think the perimeter blocking for Alabama was great on some of the quick throws or some of the runs to the perimeter. Too many times a corner or a safety came down and blew up a play or forced a play to be for one gain or -1 or 2 yards when it could have been a lot more. That was something, too, that I thought was a little bit disappointing. And
You also had a pretty decent hold on Jeremy Bernard that was bad. You know, like you had some, not only did you not block well, but you actually cost your team yards after some positive plays too.
Yeah, and it was unnecessary. I mean, it's just that I don't think that was gonna. I don't think in any way did that prevent that play from going for positive yards. The call was correct.
Oh,
But-
of course, yeah.
But it just didn't even. It's one of those that you
Just
just
set a
hate seeing even
screen.
more because you're just like, man,
Yeah.
you didn't need to do that. Like it was completely going to be okay without that. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things that's kind of tough to deal with. I also think kind of caging John Mateer. I thought some of the rush lane integrity on defense is something that could be an issue moving forward. Did you see that in a similar fashion?
You know, I didn't think it was really that bad. They had the one run on a little Q counter that was nice. John Mateer kind of leapt over. It looked like Nakai Hillgreen was going to get him, but the tight end got just enough of him to kind of disrupt his rhythm. He jumped over him, bad tackling in the second half. But if you really look at Oklahoma, I mean, how many plays did they make in the game offensively? I mean, a couple throws, couple underneath throws, one or two catch and runs, but not a ton. They didn't really get anything over the top. They kept it in front of them. Bama forced field goals. Like, it was really just one good run, and that was about it. And that might be all you need, right? But I thought the defense played very well, and they've been steadily progressing all season.
Yeah, it's yeah, the one big quarterback run for a touchdown. It was kind of overrun a little bit. You had a couple throws out to the perimeter. Not a lot of explosives for Oklahoma. I mean, for either team really in this game. I mean, I think when you look at both of them, you say explosive plays were at a premium because not many guys were able to go out and get them. A couple opportunities that were there that I think both teams kind of couldn't finish on, but either way, weren't able to generate a lot of 40, 50, 60-yard plus plays in this matchup. All right, we'll look around the SEC. Your thoughts still on Alabama and Oklahoma. Has your opinion changed on them being a playoff team or a national championship caliber team? That and more next right here on Jocks.